Hello everyone and welcome to another casual revisit. Today I'm talking about Hades. I have completed Hades once before and recorded a casual review for it. However, I had just recently went to see the play Hadestown and it reminded me of how good I remember this game being, and also Hades 2 had come out around that time as well, and so I decided a replaythrough of Hades was in order. In this game, you play as Hades' secret son named Zagreus, and Zagreus is trying to break out of hell in order to visit his estranged mother, Persephone. It is a roguelike game, however, and so every time that Zagreus dies, then he is returned back to his father's domain. This game does several things to stand itself apart from other roguelike games, and the biggest one that comes to my mind is the story and the characters actually really matter compared to other roguelike games where the majority of it is about the gameplay. And there is a ton of gameplay in Hades as well, but there are unique and fleshed out characters that you often interact with and get updates when Zagreus is building up his relationship with these characters. And so every time Zagreus dies and he is returned back to the underworld, it's not as devastating as dying in other roguelike games would be, because I'm almost excited to go and individually talk to all these different characters and see what insightful or humorous things they all have to say. You definitely need to pet Cerberus every time you return back to the underworld, and it is also fun seeing how the underworld gets developed over time. There are some cosmetic things that you can do to kind of like decorate the place, but oftentimes characters that you might have run across during the Ascension might have some unique things to say. Sometimes as the story progresses, you'll get more lore about why exactly Zagreus wants to break out of the underworld to see Persephone and why his life is a secret in the first place. But another really exciting concept about having to restart this roguelite is I feel like the progress and the rewards that this game gives you for your runs is very meaningful compared to other roguelite games. Because in other roguelite games, it's just small little tweaks of things that change. Like, I love Slay the Spire. I still play it frequently to this day, but initially when you completed runs on Slay the Spire, it's like, hey, there are additional card rewards that might show up. And that usually seems to be the reward for making progress on a roguelite in some capacity. It's just, hey, these future items might show up, or there are things that might change. In Hades, the rewards are actually meaningful. Like, you can save up for some really powerful effects, like, hey, if you die, you essentially get a second shot and a third shot. Some make it so you have a chance of acquiring more rare items, or you get an additional cast that's like a ranged projectile that you can throw at enemies, or you might start your run with an extra 100 gold. And so you can get these upgrades and they actually feel impactful. You actually feel that you are getting stronger. And so, yes, part of completing a run in this game means just getting good, but I think another aspect is, hey, if you like grind enough, it's not like an RPG with levels, but if you grind enough of these resources, they can help you immensely during your runs. There are also many different weapons that you can use that vastly affect how Zagreus battles enemies. So you start with like your basic sword that does 3 hits, but then you'll get a bow and a shield and a railgun and a spear. So all of these weapons vastly affect how combat works, and then the boons and upgrades that you acquire throughout your runs can also vastly affect how you proceed with combat as well, because every weapon has their basic attack, some kind of special attack, but then you can also get these upgrades that change what those basic attacks or special attacks do. And so it is very good at varying up the runs, and unless you are strictly pushing for a certain type of build using a certain type of weapon, then you're never really sure what you're going to get. And some builds you think that might be really powerful, you'll find out aren't. and other builds that you think aren't going to be very good in the long run, they end up being like the best builds by the time you get near the end of your run. And so while sometimes at the early game I'm feeling very confident, it ends up not being what I wanted to, but I have learned that with this game you kind of need to stick with it because you'll never know when the next really good upgrade is like right around the corner. I would definitely call this game a tough but fair combat system, especially early in the game, because even before you get all of these additional upgrades, it's still like technically possible that you could beat a run without any of these upgrades, as long as you are really good at dashing out of enemy attacks and utilizing your currency wisely. And if you have like just enough luck, it's totally possible to do that. And every time that you would die, you can acknowledge what mistake you made. I rarely ever felt like I was unfairly treated when I died in this game. But there are certainly times when it is like a bullet hell and there are a bunch of ranged projectiles all over the place and traps, and so it is difficult keeping tabs of all of these things, especially if you are a newcomer. But you do get in the groove of things. You do kind of get in that flow of attack, dodge, special, God meter, cast, you know, like, and it gets almost like second nature where you're not having to really think about it that much. So along the way, you will have a couple choices that you get to make. Like occasionally there are 2 or 3 different pathways that show you what reward you get with each pathway. Sometimes you can choose to get more gold or an upgrade. Another thing that vastly affects your runs are these boons that the Olympian gods can grant you. And I think they did a really good job personifying all of these different gods, despite them just being like a still image and text. Now the dialogue is voice acted, it's not just read, and so you can definitely hear, like if I'm talking to Dionysus, he's like the super cool chill party guy, or if I'm talking to Zeus, he's kind of like this authoritative father figure. And I think that really comes through with the voice acting. I also like how their abilities and their boons really match their character archetypes. And so if I encounter Demeter, the hunter, then she has these certain abilities that can make it so when I get critical hits, they do additional things. Or like Adonis is all about making enemies weak, like making them do less damage, but there are also certain effects that you can get from her that make it so you can charm the enemies to fight for you for a little bit. And another thing that I really appreciate about these different boons that the gods can grant you are they actually affect like pretty much every single enemy in the game. Like even the final boss before you beat a run can be charmed by Adonis's abilities. Now, one thing that I'm still feeling a little mixed about is in order to complete the story and get the end credits, you need to do 10 successful runs in this game. And so you might feel really satisfied and excited when you finally complete your first run, only to find out that now you get to do 9 more. And I understand lots of games do this, where if you do a run, you get like the majority of the story, and then if you want to like completely get all of your unanswered questions fulfilled, then you'll need to do this post-game content. But in this game, like you're really only getting a chunk of the story, and in order to really feel like you've wrapped up the story, you need to do those 10 additional runs. And because of your upgrades and these boons that you've been granted and your knowledge of the game's mechanics, it definitely makes it easier to complete those subsequent runs after your first one, because you know it's possible and you kind of know what to go for. But I wouldn't have complained if the majority of the story was told just after the first run, and then those of us who are obsessed with this game can go do the subsequent runs for just small little extra lore bits. But it does have that carrot dangling in front of you, and it does incentivize you to complete those additional runs. There is an achievement system, which normally I don't go for achievements. However, the fates have basically made these achievements, these prophecies, and if you fulfill these prophecies, then you can get some pretty substantial rewards. And so it is satisfying when you fulfill one of these achievements. After you beat a run for the first time, then there is a pact of punishment, and you're basically like turning up the heat by giving yourself additional challenges for your runs, but it also means that you get better rewards for those runs. And so it's an interesting mechanic where you're kind of like tweaking your own difficulty based on your playstyle. Like you're trying to make it easy enough for you, but still make it so you're reaching that threshold of earning those additional rewards. There's fishing, but it's very light fishing, certainly not something like a farming sim or anything like that. It's just occasionally you'll see this little light from the water and you can fish for it, and if you successfully fish, then you'll get some additional resources when you return back to the underworld. But it is just fun trying to go for those additional upgrades and feel Zagreus get stronger through these upgrades. I remember when I first completed this game, I was really excited about it and really fond of it. I remember I spent a ton of time on it. Now that I'm going into it the second time, I kind of knew what my playstyle was from the very beginning, and I knew what kind of prophecies I wanted to fulfill and what kind of trinkets that I wanted to upgrade. And so I thought that it would be a lot quicker for me to do these 10 runs. However, it still took me about 25 hours, I want to say, in order to complete all 10 runs. I also remember the first time that I beat this game, I was really enthusiastic about the story, and I thought that the story was so fleshed out. This time around, when I was doing these 10 runs, the story actually isn't that deep. Like, I remember every time I completed a run, it was always exciting to see how the story progresses. But this time around, I'm like, wow, I want to say maybe like 7 out of 10 of these runs, it's just kind of like Zagreus and Persephone talking and speculating without really too much of the story being revealed. And I still do think that it's a fantastic game. And if you're into these roguelite games, then it's definitely for you. And even if you're not into one of these roguelite games, just know that the upgrades while playing this game will definitely carry you up to the point where you can do a successful run, or 10 of them in this case. And I am enthusiastic and excited to get into Hades 2 when I finally get my hands on a copy. I remember a lot more discussion about Hades when that initially came out compared to Hades 2, and so I'm not really sure what the general consensus of this sequel is on the internet. Regardless, I'm going to give Hades a 5 out of 5. Well, folks, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Hades, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!
Oh, it's just a tiny vermin. Oh, gods!